So basically, you're trying to brainwash some of these kids? What bathroom do you use?
I use the female restrooms because I am female.
I think it's a sick thing, basically.
Have you ever wondered what it feels like to grow up with the world watching? Not because you wanted fame, but because your very existence became a headline? That's the tragic reality of Jazz Jennings, a girl who never asked to be a symbol but ended up carrying the weight of it anyway. Her story is as inspiring as it is heartbreaking, filled with victories that should have been celebrated but instead came wrapped in pain, rejection, and the relentless pressure of being different in a world that struggles to understand. Jazz was born in October 2000 in South Florida, the youngest of 4 children in a tight-knit Jewish family. From the very beginning, she stood out not in the way most parents expect, but in a way that would shape her entire future. Assigned male at birth, Jazz knew before she could even form full sentences that she was a girl. At just 2 years old, she was tugging at dresses, reaching for sparkly toys, and telling her parents in every way she could that something inside didn't match the label the world had given her. By the age of 5, her truth was undeniable. At her birthday party, she told her friends and family she was a girl, not a boy. Most children are still figuring out their favorite cartoon by that age. Jazz had to figure out how to explain her identity. Her parents, Jeanette and Greg, supported her, but the world outside wasn't so kind. At 6, Jazz sat down with Barbara Walters on national television, becoming one of the youngest people ever to publicly come out as transgender.
Someone asked me why I used to be a boy and now I'm a girl. I would say that I have a girl brain and a boy body.
Is it okay to be different?
Yes.
Do you like it?
Overnight, she became a face for something bigger than herself. People praised her bravery, but imagine the burden of being thrust into the spotlight before you even lose your baby teeth. Jazz was still a child, yet she was already being dissected by strangers who thought they had a right to debate her existence. That was the beginning of her tragedy. She didn't get to just be Jazz. She had to be Jazz, the symbol. School only added more challenges. In elementary school, she was barred from joining the girls' soccer team simply because of her identity. For a kid who just wanted to play with her friends, it was crushing. She was bullied, excluded, and constantly reminded that the world saw her as different. Her family fought tirelessly at one point, even taking on the U.S. Soccer Federation. Eventually, Jazz won the right for transgender kids to play. But those years of rejection left a mark. Instead of carefree childhood memories, she carried battles most adults never face. Growing up in the spotlight brought its own kind of cruelty. Cameras followed her family for documentaries and later the TLC reality series iamjazz, which premiered in 2015. On one hand, the show gave visibility to a group often pushed into the shadows. On the other hand, it left Jazz with no privacy, every struggle and misstep broadcast for millions to see. She became a role model for transgender youth everywhere, but at the cost of her childhood. For every supportive message she received, there were waves of hate online.
In rude comments, it definitely hurts to hear them say that they would want to kill me or something like that.
Cyberbullying became constant comments telling her she wasn't real, that she didn't belong, that her life was a lie. Even her children's book, I Am Jazz, was banned in schools across the country, sparking nationwide debates while she was still just a teenager trying to pass her classes. She didn't stop at writing. Jazz co-founded the Trans Kids Purple Rainbow Foundation with her parents to support transgender youth. She even created a company called Purple Rainbow Tales, selling mermaid tales to raise money for kids like her. Later, a doll was modeled after her, the first of its kind. On paper, these are accomplishments to be proud of. But the tragic layer is that Jazz was working as an activist while she was still trying to navigate high school. She wasn't just allowed to be a teenager, she was tasked with being a trailblazer. And yet, Jazz kept pushing forward. She started puberty blockers at 11 to prevent a male puberty she knew would make her life unbearable. By 14, she began hormone therapy to align her body with her identity. These medical steps were supposed to bring relief, but instead they introduced new challenges. Doctors told her she needed to lose 30 pounds to be eligible for gender confirmation surgery, the operation she had dreamed of for years, Imagine being a 17-year-old, carrying the pressure of not just your appearance, but your entire future on the scale. Jazz fought hard, lost the weight, and finally underwent the surgery in 2018. But instead of closure, it led to more pain. The procedure was rare and difficult, requiring surgeons to take tissue from her pelvic region and thighs. Complications followed, leading to multiple corrective surgeries within months. What should have been a liberating milestone turned into a cycle of pain, recovery, and more hospital rooms. Her tragedy deepened her body, finally aligning with her identity, but at the cost of suffering that few could imagine. All of this would be crushing for anyone, but Jazz was also battling something less visible: her mental health. Behind the cameras and smiles, she wrestled with depression and anxiety. She admitted to being in dark states where she couldn't see a future for herself, where even the love of her family couldn't pull her out. Cyberbullying only made it worse. Every picture she posted came with a barrage of hate. People she had never met picked apart her life, telling her she was a fraud. Supporters would try to defend her, but it turned her page into a war zone of insults and arguments. It's easy to tell someone to ignore the negativity. Still, when your very identity is under attack daily, it's impossible not to feel crushed by it. College should have been a fresh start. Jazz was accepted into Harvard, one of the most prestigious universities in the world. For most, that would be the beginning of a dream. For her, it became another reminder of how heavy her burdens were. She deferred her admission to focus on her mental health, but during that time, she developed a binge eating disorder. The condition spiraled out of control, and within 2 years, she had gained nearly 100 pounds. On iamjazz, she spoke candidly about her struggles, admitting she was addicted to food and unable to stop herself from eating. This wasn't just about eating too much. It was a disorder marked by loss of control, shame, and physical pain. She described eating until she felt sick, then hating herself afterward, only to repeat the cycle again. Her family tried to intervene, but even their concern sometimes turned into judgment. She revealed she felt fat-shamed by her own loved ones, the very people who had always been her safety net. Instead of finding relief at home, she felt humiliated and trapped in a cycle she couldn't escape. The weight gain wasn't just about appearance. It stole her confidence, her mobility, and her sense of control. She compared photos of herself before and after, admitting she could barely recognize the person she had once been. Depression deepened. She overslept, withdrew from activities, and questioned how she could ever return to the path she had once imagined for herself. Harvard wasn't just put on hold. It felt like a dream slipping out of reach. The tragedy wasn't that she lacked potential. It was that her mental illness robbed her of opportunities she had fought so hard to earn. And then there was love. Jazz experienced her first relationship with Amir Stewart, but even that small slice of happiness came with pain. His mother refused to accept her, misgendered her, and told him that being with Jazz meant he was gay. The relationship crumbled under the weight of disapproval. For Jazz, dating has never been easy. She has spoken openly about how hard it is to find someone who can see her as just a woman, not a label or a debate. Every time she puts herself out there, she risks rejection, not because of who she is as a person, but because of the prejudice attached to her identity. That isolation adds another layer to her tragedy, wanting love like anyone else, but constantly being judged for something she cannot change. Even when Jazz tried to reclaim her life, obstacles appeared. When she applied for readmission to Harvard after working on her health, the school told her she needed to establish an entire psychiatric team in Boston before they would allow her back. While framed as concern, it felt like another barrier, another reminder that her mental health struggles defined her in the eyes of institutions. The decision about her future was no longer in her hands. It was up to a committee to decide whether she was stable enough to be given a chance. For a young woman already carrying so much, it was devastating. Yet through it all, Jazz keeps fighting. In recent years, she's worked to lose weight, shedding nearly 100 pounds over 2 years. She continues to speak out for transgender rights, reminding others that they are not alone, even as she privately battles her own demons. That's the bittersweet truth of her life. Her strength inspires countless people, but it was forged in suffering she should never have had to endure. Jazz Jennings is still only in her 20s, but she has lived through trials that most people will never face in a lifetime. Her tragedy is not just in the hardships she endured, but in the fact that she was forced to face them all under the glare of public scrutiny. She never got to simply make mistakes in private, to stumble and get back up without the world watching. Every victory came with wounds, every milestone with backlash. She has been a pioneer, a role model, and a survivor, but also a young woman whose life has been shaped by pain as much as by courage. Her story shocks people because it strips away the illusion that fame, representation, or even family support can erase struggle. What jazz teaches us is that authenticity comes with a cost, and sometimes that cost is tragically high. But even in her darkest moments, she keeps choosing to live as herself, and that choice, despite everything, is powerful. Jazz Jennings' life is proof that being true to yourself isn't always easy, and it isn't always pretty. But even in the face of rejection, illness, and heartbreak, she has refused to hide. Her story is tragic, yes, but it's also a reminder of unimaginable strength.